I don't know what you expected, Anya. Honestly, the man's voice, Preston's voice, was a low, cutting drone, perfectly audible in the hushed, expensive silence of the Dodgegger restaurant. Anya Selwyn, her sightless eyes fixed on the cool marble table, felt the words like tiny shards of ice, sharp and cold against the sudden devastating warmth in her cheeks. A Christmas date? Blind? With me? I'm sorry, I can't do this. I thought I could be open-minded, but you can't even see the menu, let alone me. The irony was a cruel, heavy thing. Her ability to read him, his utter shallowness, was a clarity her physical eyes had never needed. The empty chair opposite her was a monument to his failure to connect, a stark, uncomfortable visual metaphor for the chasm of his emotional poverty. Her hands, resting in her lap, began to tremble, tiny, involuntary movements that betrayed the disciplined composure she maintained. Sensory description. The scent of spiced mead and pine needles, intended to be festive, now smelled only of sharp, metallic failure. She had dressed carefully, a midnight blue velvet dress, hoping for a spark of something, anything, to break the monotony of her solitary life, to finally fulfill that aching, quiet yearning for companionship. Now every thread felt like a lie, a costume for a play that had been canceled just before the curtain call. He didn't wait for her response, and the swoosh of his chair being pulled back, followed by the soft, quick thud of his hasty departure, was the final, brutal punctuation mark. She heard his shoes retreat a rapid, selfish cadence, leaving her utterly, completely alone in the heart of the most romantically charged night of the year. It was a rejection not just of her, but of her quiet, desperate hope. Her chest constricted, a sudden, sharp intake of breath. This was it. The lowest moment. She had walked this path of rejection many times, but never with such high stakes, never on a night where the ethereal plane felt so close, so full of potential magic. "I just wanted to be seen," she whispered, the words catching in her throat, a raw, private plea swallowed by the grand acoustics of the high-ceilinged room. Her memory, an unforgiving cinema reel, played a rapid-fire sequence of every past disappointment, every well-meaning relative's disastrous attempt at matchmaking, every moment where her blindness was the insurmountable wall. Flashback, her grandmother's voice, frail but firm. "Anya, my destiny child. Every disappointment is merely redirecting your path. Trust the current, my love." But now, the current felt like a freezing, desolate undertow. She fought the urge to flee, to make herself small, to disappear entirely, because she knew, with a certainty that had become her burden, that she had to face this failure with dignity. Her fingers traced the smooth, cool marble. Her eyes burned, dry and stinging, a fire behind the opaque curtain of her sightlessness. The deep silence of her own despair seemed to be pulling the sound from the entire restaurant. This wasn't an end. It was the absolute, heartbreaking bottom. Then, a disruption. The silence, her self-inflicted mourning, was shattered not by an adult's clumsy apology or a waiter's solicitous query, but by the entirely unexpected sound of small, quick feet and the soft, rhythmic tapping of something wooden. Sensory description? The scent of pine and mead was momentarily overpowered by something sharp, clean, and faintly metallic, like ozone after lightning. Two small voices, perfectly synchronized, chimed out a question right beside her, their cadence melodic, yet urgent. "Mistress? Why did the weak man run away?" Anya nearly jumped. She recognized the unique, slightly breathless timbre of the Shadowkin twins, Astrid and Bronte, who frequented the library where she volunteered. Even at 5 years old, the Shadowling twins had learned to read people, their intentions, their moods, their very emotional composition, with an acuity that eclipsed any visual perception. They were unnervingly direct. He didn't run away, Anya managed, her voice steadier than she felt, instinctively shifting into the gentle, truthful tone she used with children. He had to leave. The children didn't accept the polite lie. Bronte, the one with the tiny hand-carved toy dragon, spoke again. No, Mistress Anya. He was afraid of your light. Papa says only bad creatures run from the light. Astrid, the taller twin, added with the profound, simple wisdom of the oracle child. Maybe the weak man didn't come so you could meet us instead. He didn't deserve your Christmas. It was a powerful intervention, an emotional pivot delivered with devastating sincerity. Anya felt a sudden, unexpected sting behind her eyes, not of failure, but of a fierce, protecting gratitude. Their small hands, cool and surprisingly velvety to the touch, grasped her own. Sensory description. Their grip was cool, shockingly so, but steady and firm, a physical anchor in her swirling emotional storm. They didn't see her blindness, they only saw her emotional core, her gentle heart, the inner strength she rarely showed. The twins, creatures of the ethereal plane, unknowingly served as the catalyst, the bridge to the next, unforeseen chapter. They pulled on her hands, directing her attention not to the empty chair, but to something else. Papa is here, Astrid whispered, a conspiratorial note in her voice. He says you are the lady from the Moon Stories. The atmosphere in the immediate vicinity of their small group intensified, becoming heavier, richer, like air before a deep winter snow. Anya could feel a change in the light, not visually but sensorially, a deep, resonant warmth that settled over her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The air grew cool, shockingly so, and a deep, resonating presence stood before her. She didn't need to see him. She felt him. He was a pillar of quiet, potent energy, an immediate and absolute contrast to Preston's petty, nervous departure. The scent of metallic ozone intensified, laced now with the faint, expensive scent of old parchment and cedarwood. She heard a soft click, the tapping of a silver-tipped cane, followed by the quiet rustle of what must have been impeccably tailored clothes. The twins let go of her hands, moving to stand beside the newcomer, leaning against his legs with a proprietary affection. The children's silence was a powerful signal, drawing her attention fully to their father. He cleared his throat, a deep, resonant sound, almost a rumble. And then he spoke, not with his voice, but with his hands, using the silent, intimate language of the High Diagar people, sign language, used here as a gesture of profound respect for her other sense. The movement of his hands, she could perceive the displacement of air, the shift of energy, a complex silent poetry unfolding directly in her personal space. His language was simple, direct, yet utterly profound, echoing the innocent clarity of his children. The rhetorical framing device was now complete. On screen text, "Can we join you?" "I am Lysander Voronin," the sign spelled out, the gesture firm and elegant. "Astrid and Bronte tell me that your Christmas was almost ruined by a man of poor substance. They believe you are meant to be their guest. May we share your Christmas with you?" The sheer audacity, the effortless confidence was breathtaking. He had witnessed the whole thing, Preston's cruelty, her quiet devastation, and had not offered pity but a high-stakes narrative invitation. Anya's emotional tone, which had been heartbreaking, shifted to one of profound, tentative hope. She was no longer being offered a rescue, but a connection. Her own hands, which had been trembling just moments ago, moved instinctively to respond, using the basic sign language she had learned years ago to communicate across the language barrier with the twins during her library shifts. "Lysander Voronin," she signed back, the name feeling strange and magnificent on her fingertips. "You have a very persuasive pair of diplomats." A pause, a crucial rhythmic moment of slow burn pacing, where she took the measure of this impossible situation. Yes, I would be honored to share this Christmas with you. She felt, rather than saw, the deep satisfaction of his nonverbal response. The contrast was immediate and glorious. Lysander Voronin, the ethereal, impossibly handsome vampire king, though she did not yet know the extent of his station, didn't fill the empty seat opposite her, but pulled up a chair right next to her, closing the physical and emotional distance. The twins, having accomplished their great mission, quietly settled on the bench seats next to their father, their eyes, Anya could sense, flickering between her and their papa with intense curiosity. "I apologize for the bluntness of my children," Lysander signed, his hand movements precise and graceful, the movement of a true artist. "They were raised with the simple belief that a person's worth is measured only by the generosity of their internal spirit, and they observed yours being unjustly attacked." He offered not sympathy, but validation, a recognition of her inner resilience. Destiny, fate. Analogies. Every disappointment had led her here, she thought, the high contrast irony of Preston's cruelty becoming a true beginning. Anya allowed herself a small, genuine smile, the first she had worn all evening. They are wonderfully discerning and honest, a rare combination. The conversation flowed, authentic and simple, a stark relief from the forced social pleasantries of her failed date. They spoke of the quiet things, the warmth of a good story, the challenge of raising children to be empathetic in a cold world, the unique texture of sound and smell on a winter night. Lysander described the restaurant's festive decor, the flicker of the candles, the rich crimson velvet of the drapery, the deep, dark gleam of the polished wood, with a visual poetry that made her see it more clearly than her eyes ever could. Visual cues, flicker of the candle visually emphasized to mirror the protagonist's emotional state, transitioning from a weak flicker, Preston, to a steady, strong light, Lysander. The high-stakes narrative was shifting from one of devastating rejection to one of profound, intimate connection. He made her feel seen, truly seen for the first time in memory, not as Anya the blind librarian, but as Anya the gentle and intelligent soul. He even managed gentle situational humor when the children began negotiating with the waiter about the dessert menu. "I'm professionally trained in vegetable negotiations," he signed to her with a self-deprecating expression, mimicking his children's earnest seriousness, and the laughter that escaped her was pure, unburdened. The pacing slowed to a beautiful, deliberate rhythm as the evening wore on, settling into the intimacy of shared, quiet moments. The twins eventually fell asleep, their small, velvety heads resting against the sturdy support of their father's thigh. Lysander and Anya continued their conversation, the words now coming in long, descriptive, and poetic sentences, building the foundation of their connection. Pacing. Slow burn during high emotional moments, gazing internal monologue. The narration often pulled back to her internal monologue, giving the audience access to her burgeoning feelings. "He is beautiful," she thought, the word encompassing more than mere physical appearance. It was the beauty of his character, the quiet intensity of his focus, the deep love he held for his strange, wise children. She knew, with that profound inner clarity granted to those who must rely on inner sense, that there was a weight to him, a solemnity that hinted at a long, perhaps painful, history, but it was offset by an intrinsic kindness. She reached out, drawn by a sensory description of his hand resting on the table near hers. Her fingers brushed against his, and the contact was a jolt, a physical confirmation of the emotional spark. His hand was large, the skin cool, shockingly so, but steady and firm. It felt like holding cool marble and living fire all at once. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers gently curled around hers, a silent, powerful confirmation of their mutual connection. This moment, simple as it was, held the entire destiny-fated love trope, the idea that their two very different worlds were finally and irrevocably intertwined. Repetition of key phrases. Her grandmother's mantra echoed in her mind. Trust the current, my love. His presence alone was an inspiration, a quiet affirmation that the high-contrast irony was playing out perfectly. Preston's rejection had cleared the table for a king. The language style in her internal thoughts became elevated, poetic, describing him as a being of the ethereal plane, grounded only by the unconditional love of his twin, shadowling daughters. He was an anomaly, a contradiction, a deeply sentimental man encased in a quiet, formidable power. The moment of the reveal came softly, without fanfare, yet with immense narrative weight. The waiter returned, attempting to address the mysterious stranger. He spoke in hushed, nervous tones, his voice trembling slightly, a subtle auditory cue that something extraordinary was unfolding. "Your Majesty," the waiter murmured, his voice thick with reverence. "Do you require the private wing for your further discussion with the Countess?" Anya felt her blood run cold, the word Majesty hitting her with the force of a physical blow. Her fingers tensed in Lysander's cool grip. She was not a countess. She was a librarian who taught children to love stories. And he was not just a gentleman. He was a king. The full weight of the scene dropped in, the realization of the massive disparity between her world and his. She pulled her hand back, a sudden, sharp, almost panicked rejection of the reality. Lysander sensed her withdrawal instantly. He signed, now with a deep intensity that bordered on the dramatic. "Anya, I regret the omission, but my children would have chased you off with the title. I am Lysander Veronin, the Dajagger King, a creature of the night, bound by duty, but free in spirit." He paused. His expression, she could sense it, was one of painful earnestness. "And you, my destiny child, are the light Astrid and Bronte have spoken of for months, the one prophesied to break the Dajagger's solitude." This was the high-stakes narrative climax, the moment where the fantasy elements collided with the emotional reality. Her emotional tone was now a complex mix of tension and utter bewilderment. "A vampire king," she signed back, her movements small, hesitant. I'm a blind woman who volunteers at a library. I can't even see your kingdom, Lysander." Her sentence style became short and punchy, reflecting her inner turmoil. Lysander's response was the emotional counterpoint that brought the plot to its necessary turning point. His hand returned, tracing the back of hers with a mesmerizing, deliberate lightness, a sensory description that grounded the fantasy element in the intimate reality of their touch. He didn't offer an excuse. He offered a fundamental reframing of her worth. He was using the motivational language style now, elevating the core lesson of the story. "Anya, look at me," he signed, the gesture carrying the force of a command, but the emotion of a plea. "I have lived for 500 years, seen the rise and fall of empires, and yet the most profound thing I have ever sought is not visible to the physical eye." He tapped her temple, then her chest, his touch gentle, utterly sincere. The world is full of people who can see the sun, but fail to see the light within another person. Preston, the weak man, saw your eyes and ran. I see your soul, Anya, and I am rooted to the spot. You are the one who is truly seeing the loneliness beneath my title, the simple father beneath the crown. You see me without the distraction of my shadow. The children stirred, sensing the dramatic shift in their father's energy. Astrid opened her eyes and, with the perfect timing of the child as oracle, signed the turning point dialogue that echoed her earlier wisdom. "Papa's cold," she signed, "but you're warm. We need you to stay warm for him." The scene was now one of pure, raw sentimentality, the final piece of the rejection-acceptance arc clicking into place. The music cues would swell here, the piano-cello music reaching its dramatic, uplifting crescendo. The rest of the evening settled into the comfortable certainty of the resolution. The high-contrast irony dissolved into peaceful harmony. Lysander ordered a private carriage, a quiet, velvet-lined conveyance, to take Anya home, the twins remaining securely in his lap. The final moments of their conversation were intimate, focused not on his title or her blindness, but on the future, the fragile, terrifying, and exhilarating promise of a shared path. His language style, once elevated, became simple again, grounded in the reality of human emotion. "I will call upon you tomorrow," he signed, holding her hands in his cool, steady grip, the gesture of a promise. "I do not intend to leave your side until you tell me to. My destiny is now intrinsically bound to yours." Repetition of key phrases. The turning point dialogue was reaffirmed. "Can we join you?" had become "I will join you." Anya, finding her own emotional voice, responded with a profound simplicity, her hand signing the words that signaled her complete acceptance, her emotional resilience fully justified. "Then I will be waiting, King Lysander," she signed, "and I will have a story ready to tell you." The narrator's voice, worn and earnest, would return for the story conclusion lesson, the audience addressing style used as a rhetorical framing device to solidify the theme. And so, on a cold Christmas night, a heartbreaking rejection became the door to a legendary, fated love. Remember this, dear viewer. Sometimes the cruelest blow is simply the hand of destiny clearing the way. The person who runs from your light was never meant to warm your soul. Trust your inner vision. It knows your true companion when it sees them. The carriage stopped softly outside Anya's quiet, small cottage. Lysander stepped out first, an act of silent deference that touched her deeply. He helped her out, his arms strong and protective around her, and in that moment she felt the full weight and glory of his power. Yet she felt no fear, only safety. The scent of pine and metallic ozone clung to her, a physical reminder of the night's magic. The Shadowkin twins, now fully awake and vibrant, clung to her coat, their eyes she could feel shining with mischievous approval. They signed a final message, simple and true. "Welcome to the family, Mistress Anya." The king leaned close, his breath cool against her ear, and he spoke, finally using his powerful, velvet, deep voice, the sound a physical wave of warmth and promise that bypassed the need for signs. "Happy Christmas, Anya Selwyn. Our story begins now." He released her, and she stood there alone but not solitary, on her front step, holding the weight of a king's promise. The narrative structure was complete. Rejection had led to intervention, connection had cemented the reveal, and the resolution was the promise of forever. The entire experience had been deeply sentimental, transforming a scene of devastating personal failure into the triumphant beginning of a royal fantasy romance. Anya unlocked her cottage door, the key clicking into place, the sound definitive and final. She walked into the warmth of her home, leaving the cold marble of the restaurant and the cold cruelty of Preston behind her. The scent of the pine needles from the wreath on her door mingled with the lingering, powerful scent of Lysander and his twins, ozone, cedar, and old cold marble. She turned and quietly closed the door, sealing herself in with the memory and the promise. Her sightless eyes held a deep, profound vision of a king's devotion. Her heart, which had been heartbreakingly fractured only hours ago, was now full, uplifted, and beating a rhythmic, hopeful tempo. The story's final silent image was the flickering candle on her mantle, steady and strong, no longer fighting the shadows, but embracing the beautiful, strange darkness that had brought her the light.